The emergency session convened at 0400 Galactic Standard Time, which should tell you everything you need to know about how badly the Interstellar Federation had screwed up. Ambassador Krelnax of the Vorthian Collective watched as the council chambers filled with representatives from 47 different species, all looking like they'd been dragged from their sleeping pods. Which, to be fair, they had. His own tentacles ached from the rushed journey through hyperspace, and the translator implant behind his auditory membrane kept glitching because he'd forgotten to update the firmware. Again. This better be good, muttered Yenna Thross, the Peluvian delegate, her 4 eyes blinking independently in what Krelnax had learned was their species equivalent of an eye roll. I was in the middle of my molt cycle. It's about the humans, announced Council Prime, Vex Torvalon, his crystalline voice cutting through the murmurs. The entire chamber went silent. Then someone laughed. Actual, genuine laughter. "Oh, come on," said Delegate Moores from Kepler, 442b, his methane breather suit hissing as he shifted. "The humans? Those adorable little pink things who applied for membership last year? The ones who brought samples of something called chocolate and immediately got every species in the Federation addicted to it?" Vex didn't smile. Vex never smiled, mostly because his species didn't have mouths, but also because he lacked any sense of humor whatsoever. The humans have been classified as a level 9 threat to galactic stability. Now that got everyone's attention. For context, a level 9 threat was reserved for species that had either weaponized black holes, mastered time travel, or accidentally created self-replicating nanobots that ate entire solar systems. The humans, as far as anyone knew, had barely figured out faster-than-light travel, and still used something called money to trade goods. "That's ridiculous," Yenna said, her scales rippling with amusement. "They're barely a Type 1 civilization. They still have poverty, disease, and something called reality television." "I've reviewed the evidence," Vex continued, ignoring her, "and I recommend immediate containment protocols." Krelnax felt his internal organs sink. He'd spent the last 3 cycles as the Federation's liaison to Earth, and he'd actually grown fond of the strange little bipeds. They made terrible decisions, argued about everything, and had an unsettling tendency to adopt random animals as companions. But they were harmless, weren't they? "What evidence?" he demanded, his translator catching up with a slight delay. Vex activated the holographic display, and suddenly the center of the chamber filled with images, video feeds, and data streams. 3 months ago, we granted humanity provisional access to the Galactic Network, standard procedure for pre-membership species. We gave them access to our history files, scientific databases, and cultural archives. Yes, we all know this," Moores interrupted, waving a claw dismissively. "Get to the point." "The point," Vex said coldly, "is what they did with that information." The first video began playing. It showed a human female, maybe 30 solar cycles old, with dark skin and even darker hair pulled back in what they called a ponytail. She wore something called a lab coat and was standing in front of a whiteboard covered in equations that made Krelnax's brain hurt. "Hi, I'm Dr. Maya Okonkwo, and welcome to my channel, Let's Break Physics," she said cheerfully. "Today, we're going to talk about why the Federation's quantum shielding technology is fundamentally flawed and how to fix it using basic trigonometry and spite." Krelnax felt his tentacles go numb. The Federation's quantum shielding had taken 4 different species nearly 2,000 years to develop. It was the backbone of every defensive system in known space. And this human was about to explain, on what appeared to be a public entertainment channel, exactly how to improve it. "She published this 17 days after getting access to our files," Vex continued. "It has been viewed 800 million times. By humans alone." "Okay, but that's just one person," Yenna said, though she sounded less certain now. "Surely." Vex didn't let her finish. Another video appeared. This one showed a young human male, barely out of adolescence, sitting in what looked like a storage closet filled with electronic equipment. "What's up, everyone? It's your boy Tommy Briggs, and today we're doing something absolutely stupid," he announced with the kind of grin that made Krelnax nervous. "I read through the Federation's files on exotic matter, and I think I can synthesize it in my garage using stuff I bought from the hardware store. Let's find out if I'm right, or if I'm about to create a small singularity." Vex pulled up a damage report. He created a microscopic wormhole that lasted for 3 seconds before collapsing. His house survived. Barely. "By the eternal void?" Krelnax breathed. "It gets worse," Vex said, which was apparently his favorite phrase. "We've detected over 14,000 similar projects across Earth. Humans are attempting to replicate, modify, and improve upon technologies that took other species millennia to develop. And they're doing it in their spare time. For fun." The chamber erupted into chaos. Everyone was talking at once, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of panic, disbelief, and more than a little anger. "How is this possible?" Yenna demanded. "They've only had access to our database for 3 months. "Because they're insane," Vex replied flatly. "I've spent weeks analyzing human psychology, and I've come to one inescapable conclusion. They don't understand the concept of giving up." Krelnax wanted to argue, but he couldn't. He'd seen it himself during his time on Earth. Humans failed constantly, spectacularly, sometimes fatally, and then they just kept going. It was disturbing. "Show them the rest," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned. It was Ambassador Thexlar of the Zorathian Empire, a species known for their military prowess and general paranoia. If Thexlar was worried, everyone should be terrified. Vex nodded and pulled up another file. 2 weeks ago, a human named Lucas Park published a paper titled, "Why We Should Absolutely Not Build a Dyson Sphere, but Here's How We'd Do It Anyway If We Were Feeling Spicy." "Spicy?" Moores repeated, confused. "It's a human idiom," Krelnax explained weakly. "It means, adventurous? Reckless? I'm not entirely sure." "The paper," Vex continued, "includes detailed schematics, resource calculations, and a timeline. According to our engineers, his math is not only correct, but more efficient than our own theoretical models." "That's impossible," Yenna said. "Dyson sphere construction is purely hypothetical. No species has ever—" "The humans are already building a prototype," Vex interrupted. "Around their moon. They're calling it Project Audacity." "Undead." Silence. "They've had space travel for less than a century," someone whispered. "They still fight wars over resources," another added. "They eat solid food," a third said, which seemed less relevant but still concerning. Vex let them absorb this information before continuing. "But here's what truly concerns me. We've been monitoring Earth's communications, and we've noticed a disturbing pattern. Whenever humans encounter a problem, their first instinct isn't to find a safe solution. It's to find the most dramatic solution possible." He pulled up a compilation of what appeared to be human entertainment media. Krelnax recognized some of it from his time on Earth. Movies, they called them. Stories told through moving pictures. "Notice the pattern," Vex said, as clips played. "When faced with an asteroid, they blow it up. When faced with aliens, they either befriend them or fight them, with no middle ground. When faced with a deadly virus, they create a cure by the third act. And when faced with the end of the world, they simply refuse to let it happen." "But those are fiction," Yenna protested. "Entertainment. Not real." "Are they?" Vex challenged. "Or are they training simulations? Humans consume these stories from childhood. They're literally programming themselves to believe that any problem can be solved with enough determination and explosives." Krelnax felt something cold settle in his stomach, because Vex wasn't wrong. During his time on Earth, he'd watched humans tackle impossible challenges with nothing but optimism and questionable decision-making. They'd broken laws of physics they didn't even fully understand yet. "We need to contain this," Thexlar said firmly, "before they destabilize the entire galactic order." "Contain?" Krelnax found himself standing, his tentacles rigid with agitation. "They're a developing species. We can't just—" "Can't?" Vex turned to face him. "Ambassador Krelnax, in the 3 months since humanity gained access to our database, they have made more scientific breakthroughs than most species achieve in 1,000 years. They've identified flaws in our technology we didn't know existed. They've proposed solutions to problems we considered unsolvable, and they've done all of this while simultaneously arguing about sports, creating art, and apparently trying to determine if they can deep-fry every food item in existence." "Deep frying is a cherished cultural practice," Krelnax said defensively. "They deep-fried ice cream," Vex said. "Ice cream. Frozen dairy dessert, coated in hot oil. It violates thermodynamics just thinking about it. And yet, they made it work." Mors was shaking his head slowly. "What do you propose we do?" "Quarantine Earth," Vex said. "Cut off their access to the galactic network. Limit their expansion beyond their solar system. And pray to whatever deities you believe in that they don't figure out how to bypass our restrictions." "That's extreme," Yenna argued, but she sounded uncertain. "Is it?" Vex pulled up one final file. "This morning, we intercepted a transmission from Earth. A human child, age 12, submitted a proposal to the Federation Science Council." "A child?" Krelnax said weakly. "Her name is Riley Martinez, and her proposal is titled, 'How to Terraform Mars Using Only Existing Technology and My Mom's Garden Supplies.'" Vex paused for effect. "Our scientists reviewed it. It would work." The chamber exploded again, but this time the panic was real. Species that had coexisted peacefully for millennia were shouting at each other, demanding action, suggesting increasingly drastic measures. Krelnax slumped in his seat. He thought about the humans he'd met. Dr. Okonkwo, with her terrible coffee and worse jokes. Tommy Briggs, who'd somehow hacked into the embassy's computer system to leave encouraging messages for the staff. Riley Martinez, who apparently wanted to turn an entire planet into a garden. They weren't dangerous. They were just enthusiastic. Dangerously enthusiastic, perhaps, but surely that wasn't grounds for quarantine? All in favor of implementing immediate containment protocols on humanity? Slowly, reluctantly, tentacles, claws, and various appendages rose into the air. "Motion passes," Vex declared. "Effective immediately. Humanity is declared a galactic threat. All contact is to be severed. Earth will be isolated until further notice." Krelnax didn't raise his tentacles. He couldn't, because he knew something the rest of the council was about to learn. You don't quarantine humans. You just make them curious about what you're hiding. 3 hours later, Krelnax sat in his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel, composing his final report on humanity. The quarantine was already in effect. Every jump gate leading to the solar system, had been deactivated. Every communication channel had been blocked. For all intents and purposes, humanity had been cut off from the galaxy. He was supposed to feel relieved, safe, protected from the chaotic influence of Earth and its reckless inhabitants. Instead, he felt guilty. His communicator chirped, an incoming message on a channel that shouldn't have been possible. The human channels were supposed to be blocked. With a sense of dread, he opened it. The message was from Dr. Maya Okonkwo. It was short, just 3 words and an emoji, whatever that was. "Nice try, Krell." Smiley face. Then his console lit up with alerts. Thousands of them, all from Earth. The humans had noticed the quarantine, and they were already figuring out how to bypass it. "Oh no," Krelnax whispered. Then his console displayed another message, this one broadcasting on an open channel to the entire Federation. It was a human male, middle-aged, wearing what appeared to be casual clothing and holding a beverage called beer. Behind him, Krelnax could see what looked like a garage filled with equipment that probably violated several dozen safety regulations. "Hey there, Galactic Federation," the human said cheerfully. "This is Captain Jack Morrison, representing Earth's unofficial First Contact Committee. We noticed you tried to quarantine us. That's cute. Really adorable. Gold star for effort." Krelnax felt faint. "But here's the thing," Jack continued, his smile widening. "You gave us your entire database, every technology, every scientific principle, every loophole in your own security systems. And then you thought we wouldn't notice when you tried to lock us out?" He laughed. "Friends, we're humans. We've been breaking rules since we figured out how to make fire. This is literally what we do for fun." The feed cut out, then came back online, now showing dozens of human faces from different locations across Earth. "So, here's what's going to happen," Jack said. You're going to turn those quarantine protocols off. You're going to have a proper conversation with us about why you panicked, and then we're all going to sit down and figure out how to coexist like reasonable sentient beings." He paused, taking a sip of his beer. "Or, and hear me out, we keep doing what we're doing. We'll crack your security in about 48 hours, show up at the next council meeting uninvited, and bring really awkward questions about your technology gaps. Your choice." The transmission ended. Krelnax stared at the blank screen, his translator finally giving up entirely and just making a sad beeping noise. His communicator chirped again. It was a priority message from Council Prime Vex. "Emergency session in 1 hour. Apparently, the humans want to negotiate." Krelnax let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a cry. They just saw it as a challenge. And the galaxy, he realized, was about to learn a very important lesson. You could classify humanity as dangerous all you wanted. They'd just take it as a compliment. The second emergency session felt less like a diplomatic meeting and more like a hostage negotiation, which Krelnax supposed wasn't far from the truth. The council chambers had been reconfigured for what Vex was calling a dialogue, though everyone knew it was actually damage control. The humans had somehow managed to not only bypass the quarantine in record time, but had also simultaneously crashed 16 different Federation security systems, apparently by accident, and left apologetic notes in each one. "We are so sorry about Server Cluster 73, one note had read. "We thought it was a firewall. Turns out it was your main financial database. Our bad. We fixed it, though." "You're welcome. Also, whoever designed your encryption should probably take a cybersecurity course. Just saying." The Federation's top programmers were still crying. "They're here," announced Yenna, her scales shifting to a nervous purple color. The main viewport activated, and suddenly 5 humans appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like someone's living room. There was a couch, a coffee table with actual coffee on it, and a plant in the corner that looked half dead. "Hi, everyone," said the human Krelnax, now recognized as Jack Morrison. He waved enthusiastically. "Thanks for agreeing to this chat. We brought snacks." He held up a plate of something brown and lumpy. "Are those cookies?" Morse whispered, sounding betrayed. "Chocolate chip," confirmed the human woman sitting next to Jack. She had bright red hair and wore a shirt that said, "I survived Earth, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. I'm Captain Zoe Park, by the way, xenobiologist, pilot, and professional problem solver." "I'm not a captain of anything," added a younger human with dark curly hair and glasses. "I'm just here because I accidentally hacked into your quantum communication grid, and they thought I should apologize in person. I'm Finn O'Sullivan. Sorry about that. In my defense, your password was literally password 123. Vex made a sound like grinding glass. "That is not our password. It was for subnet 47, Finn replied cheerfully. "I have screenshots." Someone in the Federation IT department was definitely getting fired. The fourth human, an older woman with silver hair and laugh lines, introduced herself as Dr. Helena Vasquez, astrophysicist, grandmother of 6, and apparently now humanity's unofficial spokesperson, because everyone else was too busy trying to build impossible things. Guilty, said the fifth human, a muscular man, covered in tattoos, who looked like he could bench press a shuttle. Diego Reyes, engineer. I was in the middle of building a miniature fusion reactor in my basement when they asked me to join this call. It's still running, by the way. Totally safe. Probably. Krelnax put his head in his tentacles. This was a disaster. Let's address the primary concern, Vex said, his voice tight. You were quarantined for the safety of the galactic community. Breaking that quarantine was an act of aggression. Was it, though? Zoe asked, tilting her head. Because from our perspective you gave us a library card, let us check out books for 3 months, and then suddenly locked the doors without explanation. That's just rude. You were advancing too quickly, Thexlar interjected from the back. Your species is destabilizing established scientific principles. Oh, you mean we're actually using your technology instead of just hoarding it? Jack said, grinning. Yeah, that's kind of our thing. See, you guys have all this amazing knowledge, but you're sitting on it like dragons on gold. Meanwhile, we're down here thinking, hey, this warp drive equation could be optimized. Or, why aren't we using quantum entanglement for instant communication? We're not being dangerous. We're being efficient. You created a wormhole in a residential area, Vex shouted, losing his composure for the first time in his political career. A tiny one, Finn corrected. And technically, it was educational. Tommy learned a lot about spatial mechanics, also about homeowners' insurance. This is exactly why you're dangerous, Yenna said, though she sounded more exhausted than angry. You don't understand consequences. Helena laughed at that. Actually laughed, like someone had told a particularly good joke. Oh, sweetie, we understand consequences perfectly. We just don't let them stop us. Do you know how humanity learned to fly? We watched birds, built machines that shouldn't work according to our understanding of physics at the time, and crashed them over and over until we got it right. The Wright brothers didn't succeed on their first try. They failed hundreds of times. That's insane, someone muttered. That's human, Diego corrected. Look, we get it. You're scared. You've built this nice, stable galactic civilization with rules and protocols and probably a lot of paperwork. Then we show up, full of energy and bad ideas, and we start poking holes in everything. But here's what you're missing. We're not trying to destroy what you've built. We're trying to make it better. Krelnax found himself nodding before he could stop himself. He'd seen it firsthand. Humans didn't innovate out of malice. They did it because they genuinely believed everything could be improved. Better? Vex repeated. You've been spacefaring for less than a century. What could you possibly teach civilizations that have existed for millions of years? The 5 humans exchanged glances, and Krelnax recognized that look. He'd seen it before, usually right before something exploded or started working better than it had any right to. How about this? Zoe said, leaning forward. You have a problem. We know you do because we've been reading your council minutes. They're encrypted, by the way, but Finn here cracks encryption like people crack eggs. It's a hobby, Finn added. There's a sector in the Andromeda Wing, Quadrant 92, where spatial anomalies keep appearing, Zoe continued. They've been disrupting trade routes for 300 years. You've sent 17 different research teams, tried 42 different containment methods, and nothing's worked. You've basically given up, and just route ships around it. Vex's crystalline form seemed to freeze. How do you know about Quadrant 92? We read the files, Jack said simply, and we figured out what's causing it. Impossible, Vexlar said. Our best scientists have been studying. Your best scientists have been overthinking it. Helena interrupted gently. The anomalies aren't random. They're following a pattern, but you've been measuring them in three-dimensional space. They're actually fourth-dimensional echoes caused by a collapsed star that went supernova about 6,000 years ago. The gravitational waves are still rippling through subspace. The chamber went completely silent. We can fix it, Diego added. It'll take about 6 weeks, some equipment we can build with what we've got on Earth, and permission to actually try. We'll stabilize the region, open up those trade routes, and probably learn some cool stuff about fourth-dimensional physics in the process. You can't possibly, Vex started, but his voice lacked conviction. We can, Zoe said firmly. And we will, whether you let us or not, because that's another thing about humans. We don't really do well with being told no. Yenna spoke up, her voice thoughtful. Why do you want to help? You've been quarantined, threatened, classified as dangerous. Why offer assistance? Helena smiled, and it was the warmest expression Krelnax had seen in weeks. Because that's what humans do. We help, even when it's hard, even when people don't trust us. We helped each other survive ice ages and plagues and wars. We've spent our entire history falling down and pulling each other back up. You're scared of us, and maybe that's fair. But you're also our neighbors in this galaxy, and we don't abandon neighbors. Plus, it's a really cool problem and we're bored, Finn added. But mostly the noble stuff, Helena said. Mors was shaking his head slowly. Let me understand this correctly. You broke through our quarantine, crashed our systems, and now you're offering to solve a 300-year-old problem just because you can? Yes. All 5 humans said simultaneously. And if we refuse? Thexlar asked. Jack shrugged. Then we solve it anyway and send you the bill. But we'd rather work together. It's more fun that way, and honestly, your technology, combined with our creativity, we could do amazing things. We could solve problems you didn't even know could be solved. We could also blow something up, Diego said honestly. That's always a risk with us. But we'll probably fix it afterward. Probably? Vex said weakly. Listen, Zoe said, her expression serious now. You called us dangerous, and you're right. We are, but not in the way you think. We're dangerous to stagnation, to giving up, to accepting that things can't be better. Every species in this Federation has apparently reached a point where they're comfortable, where they stopped pushing boundaries. And that's fine. That's your choice. But don't punish us for refusing to stop growing. Krelnax stood up, his tentacles steady for the first time all day. Council Prime Vex, members of the Federation. I've spent months with humanity. I've watched them work, studied their culture, and yes, I've been terrified on multiple occasions. But I've also seen something remarkable. They don't innovate because they want power. They do it because they can't help themselves. It's in their nature to ask, what if, and then actually find out. Ambassador Krelnax, Vex said coldly, you are supposed to be impartial. I am being impartial, Krelnax replied. I'm also being honest. We have 2 choices. We can keep humanity locked away, pretend they don't exist, and hope they don't break out again. Spoiler alert, they will. Or we can accept that the galaxy just got a lot more interesting and learn to work with them. They're chaos, Thexlar said. No, Krelnax corrected. They're change. And change is only chaos if you're not ready for it. The council chamber filled with murmuring voices, species debating among themselves. Krelnax watched the humans on the screen. They weren't gloating or demanding. They were just waiting patiently, eating cookies, and occasionally pointing out things in the background. Is that a cat? Yenna asked suddenly, noticing a small, furry creature that had jumped onto the couch. Oh, that's Chairman Meow, Finn said, picking up the animal. He's our team mascot. We tried to explain that he's not actually the chairman of anything, but he doesn't care. The cat meowed, and somehow, that simple sound broke the tension in the room. Mors started laughing. Then Yenna joined in. Soon, half the council was making sounds that approximated laughter in their respective species. "You brought a non-sentient animal to a diplomatic negotiation," Vex said, but even he sounded less hostile. "He has emotional support credentials," Zoe said defensively. "He's very good at his job." Vex was silent for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he sighed. "Fine. You want to prove you're not dangerous? Fix Quadrant 92. You have 8 weeks, full access to necessary resources, and 1 supervisor. Ambassador Krelnax. Congratulations, you're going back to Earth." Krelnax felt his organs do something complicated. "What? Someone needs to make sure they don't accidentally create a black hole," Vex continued. "It might as well be you since you've already been compromised by their chocolate." "It was really good chocolate," Krelnax admitted. "When you succeed, and I'm saying when because I've apparently lost my mind, we'll discuss lifting the quarantine and beginning proper integration protocols." Vex paused. "If you fail, or if anything explodes that shouldn't explode, the quarantine becomes permanent. Understood?" "Understood," Helena said seriously. "We won't let you down." "You'd better not," Vexlar growled. "The entire galaxy is watching." "Good," Jack said, grinning. "We work better with an audience." The transmission ended, and the council chamber slowly emptied, delegates heading back to their quarters to process what had just happened. Krelnax found himself alone with Vex. "You think they can do it?" Vex asked quietly. "Honestly?" Krelnax considered the question. "I think they'll either solve it spectacularly or create a problem so interesting that solving it will advance science by 100 years. With humans, both outcomes are equally likely." "That's what I'm afraid of," Vex admitted. "But I'm also curious. And that, Ambassador, is perhaps the most dangerous thing humanity has given us. Curiosity." 6 weeks later, Krelnax stood on the observation deck of a Federation science vessel, watching as the human team put their plan into action in Quadrant 92. They'd worked non-stop, building devices that shouldn't exist, running calculations that made veteran physicists weep, and consuming truly alarming amounts of coffee. Chairman Meow had supervised the entire operation, mostly by sleeping on important documents. "Initiating spatial stabilization field," Diego announced over the comm. "If this works, we're geniuses. If it doesn't, well, it's been nice knowing you all." "Very reassuring," Krelnax muttered. The device activated. Energy readings spiked across every spectrum. Space itself seemed to ripple and bend. Then, gradually, impossibly, the anomalies began to fade. The spatial distortions that had plagued the sector for 3 centuries simply stopped. "It worked," Helena said, sounding surprised. "It actually worked." "Did you have doubts?" Krelnax asked. "Oh, tons," she admitted. "But that's never stopped us before." The comm exploded with transmissions, Federation scientists demanding to know how they'd done it, trade vessels already plotting new routes through the cleared space, and Vex, his crystalline voice carrying what might have been pride. "Well done, humanity. It seems we owe you an apology." "Keep your apology," Zoe said. "Just give us a library card that doesn't expire. We've got about 1,000 other problems we'd like to take a crack at." Krelnax watched as the human team celebrated, dancing badly and spraying each other with champagne, whatever that was. They were chaotic, reckless, and absolutely brilliant. The galaxy had declared them dangerous. They'd proven it by being dangerously helpful, and as Krelnax filed his report recommending full Federation membership for humanity, he couldn't help but smile. The universe was about to get a lot more interesting,